Hello there, gamerinos and gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today I'm going to tell you whether or not Dying Light 2 is worth your while. It's the second game in the Dying Light franchise and I believe the fourth zombie open world RPG by Polish developer Techlands, so they have acquired a lot of experience and improved a lot since the development of Dead Island, while still holding on to some traditions, like a bunch of glitches. Zombies clipping through cars, corpses sunken half into the ground, floating objects, respawning in a locked room, misleading or outright wrong notifications. No, I don't have unused inhibitors, fuck off. Dead Island had something really cheap to it, and while it was a very flawed game, it had a certain charm. Dying Light 2, on the other hand, has been a very ambitious project, and I'd call it the most polished and expensive, unpolished mid-budget game. It looks great, it plays really well, it offers a lot of content, but every element of it is lacking something. There are so many bugs and glitches or weird design decisions in this game. I had zombies in indoor areas not being rendered until I was standing right in the middle of them, special zombies performing a charge or jump attack and just disappearing. I believe it clipped through the ground because in one instance one of its projectiles flew at me from below. And this happened multiple times, and this is a mini-boss I need to beat to get a special item that's required to level up your health and stamina, and by that be able to take down higher level zombies. So it's pretty annoying. There's once again enemy levels, so a basic zombie can go down in 2 or 3 hits if it's at level 1, but be nearly invincible if it's at level, I don't know, 10? Not special zombies, not a huge muscular abomination of a zombie. A regular zombie without special abilities. But at least this game doesn't use a level scaling system where you devalue your equipment if you level up too fast, because zombies just grow too strong but your equipment stays static. There are still different weapon levels, and it seems you still tend to find weapons that match your level, which is still weird, at least to me, but I guess those who enjoy looter shooters might get a lot of fun out of this. As to enemy levels, it seems that certain locations and dungeons, for lack of a better word, have a level associated with it. So if an area is too hard for you, you just come back later when you've reached a higher level. Which really is the only option, because you can't silently take down a zombie with a higher level than yours, and it takes like a million hits to kill them. And by fighting one, you wake up all the others, and it's really not that fun. Sure. It's possible to clear out a room with a few molotovs when the zombies are on your level. But when they are on a higher level, you'll need a lot of fire to kill them. I'm quite aware that this is just a me thing, but I really don't like enemy levels in zombie games. And you can extend that to every game where enemies are reused with higher stats. I mean, do something interesting to create a higher difficulty. There are enough special zombies to be used for that, or give them armor or helmets. But, as I said, it doesn't seem to be as bad as it was in the first Dying Light or Dead Island. As with any modern game, there is a survivor vision in this game that highlights enemies, items and interactable objects. And there are some objects that only let you interact with them as long as survivor vision is active. So you can't just discover some messages or paintings and stuff naturally, but instead you have to activate survivor vision over and over again to not miss anything. And there are a few more issues when it comes to looting and picking up items. To pick up something, you have to press the interaction button. To search a container, you have to hold it. If there are multiple items and containers in one spot, and you try to collect everything quickly, you might sometimes highlight an item, but hold the button. And then the game does nothing, because it wants you to just tap it. Containers have a similar problem. If you tap the button, the search animation starts, but the meter gets instantly reset. But you can't restart the action immediately. You have to wait until a few moments after the animation ends, or the game just won't register you pressing the button again. This can make foraging and looting quite tedious at times. And when you scavenge inside buildings, you more often than not are crouched to not alert everyone in the building. But many of the items inside containers or cupboards or cabinets are placed in a way that the interaction prompt doesn't appear from a crouched position. And it's quite immersion breaking when you sneak around sleeping zombies just for your character to stand up and kick open a small metal box. Maybe the game could have used a longer animation for when you are crouched and a shorter animation that creates a bit of noise for when you are standing up, to create a bit of depth for the sneaking and scavenging mechanics. It also would have been nice if containers looked different after you looted them. Maybe be partially opened like it has been in Fallout 4. And chests and boxes do just that. But it looks incredibly cheap when you search through backpacks and suitcases by waving your hands around in front of it and just receiving some items out of thin air without the container being affected in any way. I mean, they took the lockpicking minigame from Fallout, why not that little detail as well? With all the scavenging comes of course a crafting system. Weapon mods return, so you can once again pimp up your hatchets and wrenches with electricity, poison or fire. Depending on the weapon, you can install up to 3 mods, so there's enough opportunity to go crazy with it. But don't rely too much on your favorite weapon, because they break after a while. And as of yet, I found no way to repair a weapon. My guess is that the game wants you to toss a weapon and grab a new one every few minutes to get you into the survivor mood. And while there are enough weapons to find so that you're never defenseless, it's not like it was in Breath of the Wild where you could find a new sword or axe pretty much everywhere or steal them from your enemies. Or for a more appropriate example, like in Condemned, where you could just rip a steel pipe or a 2x4 out of the wall. And since weapons scale with your level, though again not as fast as in Dead Island, your fancy buffed up machete becomes pretty useless after a while, and it still hurts to lose a rare weapon. The worst of both worlds. Aside from weapon mods, you can also create first aid packs, Molotov cocktails, drugs to increase your resistances, lockpicks, and a bunch of other more or less helpful things, depending on your playstyle. To craft something, you need a recipe that you can buy from certain merchants or receive as a reward from side quests. There's nothing more to it. As long as you have the recipe and the required resources, you can craft the thing. You can even upgrade your recipe up to 10 times to create more powerful versions of weapon mods and consumables. Sadly, this is not done in a plausible way, like by finding an improved recipe by exploring the city or helping one of the many NPCs, or by gaining experience through crafting the thing, but by paying the craft master to just tell you how to get more out of the recipe. Which already seems weird and inconsistent with the lore. From what you learn in the game, a taskmaster's job is to create and invent things for the benefit of their community. So if they already know a more efficient way to create a medpack, for example, why wouldn't they share this knowledge? Why would they wait for you to give them random stuff to upgrade your recipes one tier at a time? Maybe they don't know. Maybe they need the resources you give them to experiment with and discover new ways to improve on their recipes. And that would make sense if you'd need to give them actual ingredients or anything that makes sense. And now it gets worse because you have to hand over zombie trophies. Severed heads of the infected. Well, maybe it could still make sense. I mean, things like immunity boosters or UV light grenades might need a bit of zombie tissue to be tested on. But in what way does a zombie head help me come up with a better way to craft lockpicks? This would have made more sense if the faction leaders or quartermasters or maybe a hunter's guild or something like that rewards you for bringing in zombie trophies because you proved your worth to the community. This isn't the only instance of nonsensical world building though. The overall story is fine, I guess, but all the little details and side stories are really inconsistent. You are told that being outside after dark is incredibly dangerous, but some of the quests require you and the quest giver, who is sometimes a kid or an opera singer or some other person who isn't really fit to tackle the buffed up zombies at night, to be out in the open after dark. People are standing around on the street, surrounded by zombies, to have a wake for the deceased, and sometimes multiple times for the same person.
Good Lord, take Erica in with you. Good Lord, take Erica in with you.
I guess this is to make the city feel more alive, but it makes it feel more artificial. One of the faction leaders actually thinks that rare and hard to get crystals that don't have any real use in this world, aside from being good luck charms, are a better form of currency than paper money. Because, as they say, it's a tangible thing, in an economy based on trading scraps and clothes and food around. How is a useless crystal that not many people can get their hands on better than money or simply continuing trading goods? A fully grown-ass adult talks about some new inventions of him, like a retractable dog leash or a fence for the goats that is electrified and which he calls, wait for it, the electric fence. And his old as fuck employer really reacts to this like this is some groundbreaking new idea. Hell, it's 2036 and the world ended 15 years ago in 2021. How does no one remember basic conveniences of the 20th and 21st century? There is no excuse for the old guy, but maybe the adult inventor, as I perceived him, wasn't actually an adult, because I later had to look for 2 kids and one of them didn't look any different from any other random adult NPC in the game. This goes both ways though. Another man is referred to as old, but doesn't look really older than anyone else. Yeah, character models are a bit hit and miss in this game, but as long as you don't have close-ups of them, like during conversations, it's fine. The game overall looks really good. The world is chock full of details, graffiti on the walls, signs of destruction and dilapidation on everything in the environment, floors littered with garbage, blood and entrails, lush plant life overgrowing abandoned buildings. It looks just great and is a real treat to parkour your way through. The parkour itself has a lot more weight to it this time. I guess they wanted it to feel more grounded and it threw me off in the beginning, but with every session I played, I grew more fond of it. You start off with just some basic moves, but just by running, jumping, climbing and of course fighting, you level up your respective skills and unlock new abilities, like sliding or wall running, as well as advanced combat maneuvers. Combat also feels slower and heavier, and because of that, every hit has more impact. Gone are the days of swinging a knife with light speed. There are some flaws in this as well. For example, it's hard to judge the reach of some of your enemies' attacks, and your dodge, which looks like it covers quite a large distance, doesn't take you always out of harm's way. And zombies often seem to hurt you just by touching you, which results in a lot of cheap hits when you hack at them. But it's mostly fine. This combat system is more methodic and reactive, with careful dodges and blocks to trigger special attacks and the like. At least when you're fighting humans. Killing zombies is still a bit mindless, but to be honest, I wouldn't have it any other way. There's this weird thing with leveling up in that you get a preview of a skill you want to unlock in the form of a video clip. And some of those aren't muted, so sometimes you go through your skill tree and suddenly your eardrums get blasted with a random sound burst. Don't know if this was an oversight or they wanted only some of the clips to have sound. I'll go with the first option. One aspect of the leveling system I don't really like are the inhibitors. These are collectibles you can find all over the city and can exchange for health or stamina upgrades. It works kinda similar to Breath of the Wild. Do you want to be more resilient during fights, or do you want to climb and run or swing your weapon around for longer? Also, every upgrade improves your immunity to the zombie virus. I'm going to get to that in a bit. And if it stopped here, I'd be fine with it. My first instinct was to never use any inhibitors, because the game showed a vague warning in the beginning that using these comes at a cost. So I thought that I might affect the ending if I use those. That's not the case though, as far as I came to understand. The game not only forces you into using them at least once or twice, it also locks off most of its mechanics behind this upgrade system. To unlock combat or parkour skills, you need to have the required amount of health or stamina. So a low health or stamina run isn't really feasible, or at least not a lot of fun since you won't get access to most of your moveset. But yeah, unlocking all kind of movement options and exploring the city by jumping from roof to roof is a blast. There are a bunch of optional areas to explore, to find weapons and resources, as well as stuff to find at every corner, like special zombies you need to kill to collect their heads, survivors in need of your help, baddies that try to ambush you. And this time the game implemented the nature of the infection and how the zombies behave into the core gameplay pretty well. In the first game, going out after dark had a bit of a risk-reward system, but was mostly discouraged, because it buffed up the enemies so much that running away was always your best option. This game has you roam the streets at night a lot more. While there are still more and more dangerous zombies out at night, not every zombie gets superpowers. Most of them are still the same as during daytime, though you'll come across more runners at night. Only when you get noticed by a howler does the game turn into Dying Light 1, because they alarm other zombies and start a chase. You can theoretically hide and wait out the chase, but it didn't really work for me. It's always a better choice to get to a safe zone fast. Since zombies in Dying Light are allergic to daylight, some more than others, they sleep or wander around inside the many explorable buildings during the day, so it's suicide to try to search them when the sun is out. At night though, most of the infected leave their shelter and roam the streets, so you can safely, or at least less dangerously, explore these buildings to find some valuable resources. But to not make it too easy for the player, there's a new drawback to nightly excursions. In the first game, you being infected was more like window dressing. In this game though, you have to work around it constantly, and that is where the immunity comes into play. Whenever you're out of the sunlight, which is all the time during the night, your immunity drops, and when it reaches 0, you turn and respawn instantly at the nearest safe zone, which is punishing enough when you're deep inside a dungeon area. There are some consumables to fill up your immunity meter, but at least early in the game it can get pretty tense. You start off with 5 minutes of immunity. That means you can be in the dark for 5 minutes at a time before you need to get back into the sunlight or bathe in UV light to recharge and stop the infection from spreading. By using inhibitors and upgrade health or stamina, you also increase your immunity and raise the time limit. I really enjoy this system. It's tense, it requires strategy, at least in the beginning, and it is great in showing you how far you have come over the course of the game. The more you explore the city and help out its inhabitants, the more safe zones you'll unlock. While it's dangerous to venture too far away from the faction outposts in the early game, which makes some of the early quests quite difficult, you later can take greater risks, dive deeper into abandoned buildings, take more time to hunt special infected, because there's a safe zone with a UV lamp around every corner. It really feels like you liberate the city from the zombies one building at a time. You can spend so much time just exploring and scavenging, unlocking new safe zones, taking on side activities, that it's sad that the story doesn't factor in the free roaming elements of this game. When I play games like this, I try to tackle all the available side quests in between main story missions. So I spent quite a few days and nights in the city before continuing with the main quest, where the quest giver remarked on my arriving last night. Come on, couldn't they have just said the other night? Or have 2 different voice lines depending on how much time you've already spent in the city? Things like that are really immersion breaking. Not the biggest problem, but a bit of a pet peeve of mine. Another thing that broke my immersion pretty badly and led to me not really caring about all the little stories is the way the game handles dialogue choices. The game pretends to have meaningful choices, and that might be true when it comes to faction allegiances, so you can sometimes decide which factions to help during a quest, and you can assign special buildings to a faction to strengthen them, which affects what helpful objects appear in the city and which faction leaders survive the game. But your decisions during side stories don't really affect anything. They don't change the power structures in the city, they don't affect your standing with a faction, they mostly just determine what kind of reward you get after completing the quest, and sometimes cause an NPC to disappear who'd otherwise continue standing around in the background, not interacting with you. And most of the time, the game doesn't give you enough information to make an, well, informed decision. You get a quest with multiple quest markers, but if you arrive at the wrong one first, the quest ends before you had a chance to explore all your options. Often the game gives you multiple choices you have to choose from while a timer counts down, but the on-screen prompts don't tell you what your character will actually say. Flipping a coin wouldn't have less chances of success. You just select an answer and then listen to a long-ass dialogue that you can't further influence in any way. And then the results just happen, and I don't care one bit. The game should have just dropped the dialogue choices and given Aiden a canonized moral code. As it is now, the character is involuntarily inconsistent because the choices I believe to make don't overlap with the actions the player character takes. Don't play this game for the writing. At best it's passable, and at worst it is an inconsistent mess. Play it for the fast-paced exploration gameplay, for the zombie survivor fantasy. Take your time to explore this ironically beautiful city, play around with all your different movement abilities, enjoy the tense moments when you're creeping through the dark, sneaking up on unsuspecting infected, trying to loot just a little bit more before you need to get back out and into the light. Because that is where the game shines. And it's a lot of fun. Despite all my criticisms and the flaws I mentioned, of which there are many. But I'd rather have a flawed game with some great ideas and mechanics than a polished but safe and mediocre experience. So yeah, give this one a try, it's really good. And with that, I bid you adieu. Have a great day, that's it from Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.
Sophie has interesting. Don't make me laugh. Maybe there's way fewer around. You could get one figured out how to